SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Treasurer David McRae has returned more unclaimed money to Mississippians than all previous state treasurers combined. More than $170 million back in the hands of households, businesses, churches, and nonprofits. Treasurer McRae is on a roll, and he's not letting up. Search for and claim your money today. Treasury.ms.gov.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C Spire. Power your home or business with C Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C Spire. C Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. Morning there, Rhino.
Howdy, howdy.
Well, the markets, the story this morning, looking good. You'll like what you see today. Quite a reversal from what we've become accustomed to, which are just big sell-offs every day. And that's because the president says, well, we might just end this war without getting the Strait of Hormuz fully reopened. That's what he told the nation, actually the world, yesterday, reported by all the major news sources. I think there's some chess playing going on here, though, honestly. I'm not sure what all that means. He also continues, does the president, to scold our European allies because they ain't helping. I think that's the bottom line here. And I'm with him on this. For far too long, I believe they have enjoyed the protections this nation has afforded them and the rest of the world, frankly, all paid for by the American taxpayers and future taxpayers because a bunch of that money's been borrowed. So I'm with him on that. He's the first president really to point out the disparity. Would you agree? I mean, nobody else really got firm with the other countries that have enjoyed American protections to the extent other members of NATO have, who spend a teeny tiny fraction of their GDP.
Yeah, the only people I can think of at that level of politics that even talked about it were candidates, and they didn't win.
That's exactly right. In the meantime, I just heard this on the way in. Microsoft has been hit with a competition regulator probe. Bottom line is, the UK, the Brits, they're going after Microsoft. They said, they just have too much power in the software business. You know what I got to say about that? Create your own damn Microsoft, you lazy freaking Brits. That's exactly what it is. You're more worried about your stupid leisure time than you are working and producing. Not understanding, as you know, Rhino, that most of all this technology that powers our world, a lot of midnight oil was burned to produce it, to create it. This is not a defense of Microsoft. Rather, it is a condemnation of Europe, who's constantly looking to put up roadblocks to American technology companies. They're cool with enjoying all that technology, and they get great benefit out of it. Is there any equivalent across the rest of the world, including in Europe? It's always the EU. They're always mad about something, always going after American technology companies. The answer is no. You don't create squat because you're too dang lazy. You two are worried about your national health program and all the other stupid social programs you have. That's where all the tax money goes. And what that means, of course, is that you've got your boot on the neck of your private sector, and they don't create anything. Why? There are no rewards for it. This is what, by the way, the Democrats in this country want. They don't get the second order thinking, as you like to say, which, you know what, if you let people and companies retain more of what they produce, they'll produce more. It's pretty straightforward. Think about your own household. When you get to the point in the UK where you're at what the median household income is in this country, everything over that, you're paying 60, 70% of the government. It's ridiculous. So Microsoft's been hit with this probe, and I caught this on the way in, and I know I get upset about it because it seems like it's every other day it's Europe dreaming up something, honestly, fabricating something to go after American technology companies. They just think, these guys are too powerful in the cloud business. Well, that's because people use what they make and don't really care about, I got to have alternatives. Nobody cares until it gets to the point where they have 100% of the market and it doesn't get any better. They don't innovate because they don't need to. That's just not the case. So I'm on the soapbox this morning about Europe because I feel like, wait, we give you all this defense, all this security, we pay for it, and then you go after American technology companies the way you do? It's because you're resentful, you're jealous, you're envious, because you have no equivalent. And you likely will never have one because the conditions, the policy environment in your countries, leaning more towards socialism and government control and outrageous taxes and regulations, it turns out those conditions aren't conducive to innovation. Thus, you've never created such. You can't really point to any major company in that industry who began there, whose genesis occurred in the UK, for example. Ridiculous. Special operations forces have been sent to the Mideast. The president weighing his next move. Honestly, I think this is a bit of a chess match that he's playing right now. And he tells our allies, by the way, get in gear and help out. Help us close the strait, or reopen the strait, I should say. He says to build up delayed courage. I like that. And help the U.S. take the Strait of Hormuz.
He's basically saying they're the ones feeling the pinch of the oil.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
Why not go get your oil?
And gas as well, of course, as you know. So, which they consume much of, and we export in this country. So he said in all caps that U.S. allies like France, they're being very unhelpful. And he bashed the U.K. for giving the negative nod to get involved in what he calls the decapitation of Iran. Even as the Brits are griping about the price of gas, and that's largely caused by the constraint of oil moving through the Strait of Hormuz. But they won't do anything about it. Hey, U.S., come take care of this, like they always have. I say no more, and I applaud the president for scolding them. He should. He's admonished them and said, get out there and help. I'm all for it. In the meantime, here in this country, gas officially, nationwide, $4 a gallon, first time since 2022. So the world's largest economy, that of the United States, feeling the impact of this deepening conflict But like I said, traders like the message from the president yesterday where he said, maybe we can go ahead and call it a day there and exit the region without opening the Strait of Hormuz. And I have got to believe that the other objectives have been achieved, or they feel like they have, which includes decimating the nation of Iran's Air Force and Navy and ensuring that they do not have the ability to produce a nuclear weapon, dramatically, if not completely, eliminating and diminishing their ICBM, their medium-range ballistic missile capability. Seems like that the attacks there have subsided, or the use of those weapons have subsided somewhat from Iran. And then also ensuring that our allies in the Middle East are protected. It's kind of a series of the objectives stated by the president. I got to believe he feels like those have been attained, and therefore he's comfortable exiting. We'll see what happens. Right now, it's just an announcement, and it's not set in stone. There's no official proclamation that we're leaving the region. He's just saying, actually, it's aides that may. He personally, I haven't seen any official statement from him. That'd be on his Truth Social platform. Aides within the White House are delivering that message. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio. Stay with us. We got a lot to talk about today.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
We're rolling. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
What? This is so
awesome. On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio at 11:05 today. It's Davis Pace, President and CEO of Mississippi Enterprise for Technology, MSET, the acronym for that organization. And then at 12:05, it's Representative Sam Creekmore. He's Chairman of Public Health and Human Services, represents District 14. That's Union County, New Albany, Mississippi. Crude oil still on the move upward, but traders still feeling chipper at the president's, certainly one of his aides, or multiple aides actually, delivering the message yesterday that the president could, in fact, end our war efforts, even though the strait is not reopened. And he again imploring our European allies to, hey, do something. Be somebody today, Europe. Instead of just suing American companies. I get pissed about that, Rhino. You can tell. I really do. You think people in the UK are receiving benefit from Microsoft products? I know that's a stupid rhetorical question. And again, I'm not defending Microsoft. I'm just mad about the fact that these people who produce nothing, they add nothing to the betterment of society from a technology perspective, are constantly looking for some lame excuse to sue American technology companies. How can you not conclude you're just envious, you're jealous, you're pissed because you can't do this? And it's because you've created an environment that is not conducive to innovation. And I think we would agree we can even make it more conducive over here. But unfortunately, we got a lot of people in this country that think like the Brits and the Europeans and want to send more money to government so they can create more programs, which is exactly what's caused Europe to be, let's just say, to underachieve. The mighty England, one of the first civilized countries in the world. How did they fall so fast? Who convinced them? Oh, we need more programs. France? I think I got this right. Like the whole country takes off in August or something insane like that. It's against the law to send emails to employees in a private company in France after hours. You can be cited for that. We've seen police in Britain, bobbies running around arresting people for tweets. That's why you can't create anything. Because
I think they arrested one lady for silent prayer.
Silent prayer. Yeah. So when you're running around worried about stupid stuff like that, you tend to be less productive. You agree? So they don't get that, you know what? Freedom is an essential ingredient of creating value for society. There's a reason why this country is the wealthiest. Why more good for the world has come out of this country than any other. That's why. But we got people in this country, like I say all the time, just want to recut that pie. They don't want to grow it. Oh, we've made all this money. Let's just redistribute it. And there's some people that lack some brains. You were just telling me. This is a good one, folks. You were just telling me on the break.
Yeah, we found video evidence that at least one German man has a sense of humor, which apparently seems to be rare, talking about Europe and stuff. But no, this is a German dude. It was originally from TikTok. I found it on Twitter. On TikTok, it was from, what's the account name? Because it's some ridiculous Gen Z, Gen Alpha account. Here we go. No Cap On God For Real. is the name of the TikTok account. But this is from Twitter where I found it. Give it a listen to this German dude asking a question of a protester at the No Kings protest this weekend.
Isn't it a little bit homophobic that we're so focused on the straights of homos and not the gays of homos?
Yes, I agree. Yes, for sure.
Why do you think they're willing to leave the gays of homos behind?
I think it's just historically, gays have always been very discriminated against, which is wrong on so many levels.
Even in war.
Yeah, even in war. It just takes more reform in government, obviously, and then also educating society.
I just feel like if we're going to go in there, we can't leave the gay people behind. I don't think we should go in there at all, but if we're going to, the gays of homos, we could turn it into Fire Island.
For sure.
That's just unbelievable. Oh, man. Jeez.
She's so serious.
I know. That's what's always so funny about this kind of stuff. Is that, and you know what? They left feeling so good because they were standing up for a certain special interest segment of society. I'm standing up for the gays of Hormuz. Oh, my gosh. Just totally unbelievable. So there is also some news out of the Supreme Court today. I didn't even know this case was being heard by the court. But it comes out of Colorado. And it involves whether or not a counselor, a school counselor, can counsel a student about their desire to change their gender identity or their sexual identity, or just take it all the way that you can and submit to the various medical procedures that would, at least purportedly, ostensibly, alter one's, I'm not even going to say change, I'm just going to say alter one's body in an effort to be considered the other sex in which they were assigned at birth. And so, not surprising in Colorado, though Colorado's more of a purple state. I don't really see them out there in the far left loony land. But in Colorado, a Christian therapist was not able to try to counsel with students, and there were some 20 or so therapists that were working with students who were confused about their gender identity or sexual orientation. These would be minors under 18. The state doesn't allow that. Now, what do you think, Rhino? Bet your bottom dollar if a student expressed such a desire, they'd be totally cool with them being surrounded by loony leftist liberals who would embrace it, encourage it. You know, we talked about this concept of love bombing and shoot them all kinds of messages and letters and emails and just words of encouragement and adulation and praise. Have parties. Oh, good. You want to whack your genitals off. Let's have a party. That'd be fine, right? That'd be cool. But you try to say, let's think about that in a minute and try to reasonably counsel as counselors are taught. Mental health therapists, because it's a mental problem. Oh, no, can't do that. Supreme Court says, not so fast, Colorado. This is good news. So Justice Neil Gorsuch said Colorado may regard its policy as essential to public health and safety, but the First Amendment stands as a shield against any effort to enforce orthodoxy in thought or speech in this country. Gee, I thought we figured that out about 250 years ago. Isn't that right? Wasn't that like one of the main purposes of the formation of the country? Just that. There's a reason it's the First Amendment. Is that lost on these nuts? So, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson dissented. Are we shocked? Not whatsoever. And she read a lengthy summary of her opposition from the bench. This decision might make speech-only therapies and other medical treatments involving practitioner speech effectively unregulatable. Criticizing her 8 colleagues for having made this momentous decision without adequately grappling with the potential long-term and disastrous implications. Here's what the justice doesn't get. That's not for you to decide, lawmaker in robe wannabe. You know what I'm saying here? Because their job is to interpret the law and the Constitution. If they passed a law and it conflicts with the Constitution, sorry, Colorado, get over it. But no, she's an ideologue sitting in the Supreme Court. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook.com.
Attention, adoring fans! It's time for
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. So the house band, Rhino, played a little bit at the weekly Bible study the House conducts. And Representative Dan Eubanks, who leads that effort, he, of course, in the house band, invited the house band to play a little gospel music to go along with the reading of Scripture and the study of the Bible. And we hunkered down in room 204. That's a big committee meeting room where the Education Committee, which is a big committee, meets. Turns out, did you know this? There are rules against playing music in the rotunda of the Capitol. So we were unable to set up there. And there was standing room only and people out in the hall that were enjoying the show there. So
I think there's restrictions, but it's not a complete ban.
Well, according to our legislators, they weren't, I guess, willing to test it. How about that? So
maybe it's while it's in session.
That could be. So we set up an all-acoustic performance there of some great gospel music, and it was really good. I was pleased. I played the cajon. That is, if you're not familiar with that, a rectangular box-shaped cube, if you will, rectangular cube that you sit on. The percussion instrument has ports and some snares that are attached inside it, and my hands now hurt from playing the cajon for about 45 minutes. No, it was fun. It was good, and I tell you, everybody was participating in the great gospel music. How great their art. Representative Bubba Tubb on lead vocals there did an outstanding job. Everybody did great. Representative Steve Lott on the acoustic guitar, Representative Lance Varmer also on the guitar and some lead vocals. And we had a page, I apologize, I don't know his name, didn't catch his name, that from the Senate that turns out played a little violin and was familiar with some of the songs. And I'm not sure exactly how the connection happened, but certainly pleased with it. It was a bunch of fun, no doubt about it. And we also had, I believe, who might be the head page, if I'm not mistaken, in the House, Anders Estorge. She did a little lead vocals for us as well, has a great singing voice. So we had fun and picked up a couple of more gigs I found out this morning as well. So they're all gaveled in down there, right? I think went into session at 9 o'clock. And I was just looking at the report of what's remaining. I appreciate you putting together a little special report that searches using our system to search the database of what does remain. And it turns out not much, I think is one way to put it. Bills remaining in conference, just ran at 37. It does appear that all the appropriations bills have been passed by the legislature. I'm not sure of their status with respect to the governor's signature. I don't expect any pushback there. We discussed it yesterday, of course, an increase in our budget of 3.5% or so, $260 million. So if you were hoping for a decline in spending coming out of our legislature, you're going to have to keep waiting. That did not happen. Most of that in the Medicaid program, additional spending in the Medicaid program. You could see this coming from 100 miles away, that the cost of Medicaid was going to continue to rise. Medicaid is a difficult beast to appropriate because you can't predict how many claims you're going to have. And, of course, Rhino, you can't predict how many people are going to sign up. It's not like, here's how much money you got, and it's fixed because we know exactly the number of people who are going to sign up. It is managed by a third party, a managed care organization. That's typical in the states, to contract with a third party to administer the Medicaid program, because it's a big insurance program is what it is. And these guys have the scale to do that across multiple states. Centene's the company that Mississippi contracts with. I believe they have contracts in 31 of the United States for that purpose. But the Medicaid program, I think you can expect continued increases in the budget for Medicaid, the number 2 spending category in the entire general fund budget, second only to education. It now will cost the state, Medicaid, over $1 billion. It was just under $1 billion last year. It eclipsed that high water mark, and that's paired with the federal government's Medicaid funding, in which Mississippi receives the highest percentage of the total program because it is based on per capita income, and we continue to, unfortunately, sit at the bottom of all 50 states in that category. And so some 78% of the Medicaid program funded by the federal government, that amounts to just under $7 billion hard to fathom that the combined federal, state, and then there's some provider taxes, about $500 million on top of that. $50 million on top of that. And so it puts the whole program in the $8 billion mark. Hard to believe. That's how much we spend on Medicaid, with some 700,000 enrolled in the program in the state of Mississippi. And then with respect to the education budget, we got one of those too. That increased. Of course, a lot of that due to the teacher pay raise, $2,000. School attendance officers will get $5,000 raises. Education teachers, an additional $2,000. Teachers and teacher assistants, $2,000. So teachers, teachers assistants, special ed teachers, $2,000 raise. School attendance officers, $5,000. That's once the legislature, the House and Senate conferees agreed to those provisions, and so that headed to the governor. So this is a significant increase of about $120 million over last year's funding for education. 442,000 students is what we had 5 years ago. Now we have 424,000, 483,000 10 years ago. Point here is that we've got declining enrollment and an increase in spending on education. Declining enrollment, increase in spending. Now, I get it. You have to factor in the realities of market conditions. Other states, of course, increasing their teacher pay. You've got inflation. We have to be concerned about that. I'm just sharing the math here. Enrollment down, spending up. I think that Mississippians would like to see some effort to root out some of the unnecessary spending across all of government, but that would, of course, include education, which accounts for about 53% of all general fund spending. You know, there's been proposals, at least, on the margin to consolidate schools, to strip some of the duplicative administrative funding. It is thought to achieve that, school district consolidation, but that always gets met with lots of pushback. And so we continue down the road with the same number of districts without any changes there. But I think Mississippians would like to see some effort, again, to root out some of the frivolous spending across state government, including education. I do have concerns about potential declining revenues to cover this increase in spending, declining revenues as a result of the reduction of the income tax rates, and just more importantly, macroeconomic conditions. Now, the economy in Mississippi still remains fairly strong, as it does across the country, but I don't know that we've seen the full downstream impact of the war in Iran and what that's doing to, obviously, the price of energy and the price of many other commodities, all of which have an energy component. Now we've got economists predicting 4.2% inflation this year. That's not good, given that we're sitting at about 2.5% now. So I think right now people are a bit frustrated with the price of gas and, in particular, the price of diesel. We got a report on that as well. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
In Mississippi.
Come on. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
All right, we are back
on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Okay, so I want to get this correction out there. It looks like the total provider tax assessment is about $500 million that goes with the state's share of Medicaid that is combined with the federal share of Medicaid, putting the total program this year in the $8.5 billion range. That's the total budget. It's hard to believe, isn't it? $8.5 billion. So think about this, folks. The entire general fund budget is $7.3 billion, and then this just further illustrates a point that I've made many times on this program, that our government is essentially in the health insurance business. When you consider that the Medicaid program, which is health insurance, is bigger than the general fund budget in Mississippi. You look at the federal government, look at Medicare, Medicaid, and the combination of those two, and then throw Social Security in that. Now, I get it. That's not health insurance. You got TRICARE as well for our vets. We're in the pension and health insurance business at the federal level, essentially, when you think about how much of the total budget that comprises. Really is incredible. The governor has vetoed a bill that it's called the Right to Try Medical Cannabis Act. And this is because of his concerns that patients suffering conditions would be able to come into the state, would have allowed out-of-state residents or those who have been within the state for less than 45 days to obtain a medical cannabis card. And that's what the governor had a problem with. And so he said the original intent of this bill when filed was commendable, to afford Mississippians with painful and debilitating terminal illnesses that do not qualify under the Act an opportunity to petition the state health officer for authorization to try medical marijuana. However, when it reached the other chamber, in the Senate that is, it was amended to extend the right to try to every person on the planet. He said he agrees that terminally ill patients near the end of their life, that's in quotes, by the way, should be able to try any, quote, medication or treatment, end quote. He disagreed with the amended version of the bill. He referred to Dr. Dan Edney's concerns with the additional language for out-of-state residents. Dr. Edney, of course, the state health officer responsible for administering the program, the medical cannabis program, implemented in the state a couple of years ago. So the governor vetoed it. I don't expect that veto to be overturned. Down at the Capitol this morning, visiting with some legislators, half a dozen or so. I didn't do a complete straw poll there. It's just my gut feel, based on their reaction, that they'd let this thing sit. So, interesting that the governor vetoed this. It does seem crazy, does it not, Rhino, that we would just open this up to anybody like this, that we should be concerned about the residents of our state and not just anybody coming in here for this purpose? Unless I'm misreading this.
I think the idea behind non-residents being allowed the right to try would be if they were seeking treatment in the Magnolia State but weren't residents of the Magnolia State.
Yeah, I think that's a problem. Now, another major piece of legislation we were discussing offline there. Would you please update the folks on the legislation that would have named an asset in the state after Commissioner Willie Simmons, Transportation Commissioner?
It was Senate Bill 2610. That's 2610 from Senator Albert Butler.
Yeah.
It was dropped way back in January, on January 22nd. Made it through the Senate Universities and College Committee, went on the Senate floor, passed unanimously. Referred to the House, went to House Universities and Colleges, House Public Utilities, brought up on the House. The House had a floor amendment. This is still all one page of legislation that would rename a building on Alcorn State's campus after Willie Simmons. On the House, voted unanimously. So both sides of the legislature agree unanimously that this building, this biotech building at Alcorn State University, should be renamed after Willie L. Simmons. It goes to conference, and it died in conference.
I don't get it. I really don't. Something else to pass on is relief for the alcoholic beverage control situation. You know, it's crippled. That legislation that would have allowed retailers to buy outside of ABC, that failed as well. Coming right back with Davis Pace from MSET. Stay with us.
Of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is hour 2 of Middays live from the Element Wealth Studio. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's our pleasure to welcome now Davis Pace, President and CEO of the Mississippi Enterprise for Technology. Hey, Davis, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Gerard, thanks for having me. Exciting couple weeks here with your space stuff. I'm excited to be here.
You bet. So that's what I wanted to ask you about is to tell the folks about this Artemis project.
Oh, man. Well, tomorrow, Thursday, I'm getting my days mixed up. The Artemis II is going to launch at 6:30-ish, hopefully, with about an 80% likelihood that's going to happen. The mission is to actually orbit the moon. So we're going to send astronauts to orbit the moon this week. That's the first time and the furthest that a human in 1972.
Wow.
That is a really exciting thing. Yeah. So it's pretty awesome. And the really cool thing is the Artemis program broadly is the space launch system. That's the actual vehicle that they're going to take to the moon. And that SLS was tested in Mississippi at Sine Space Center. So it's something we should all be really proud of as Mississippians.
Man, that's really cool. So tell us how MSET was involved in that.
Well, so our job, MSET's job is we are the state's Office of Space and Technology. So we are a public-private partnership that sits between the Mississippi Development Authority, the 4 research universities in Mississippi, and NASA Sine Space Center. So our job is to sit between industry and our research labs at our universities and our research labs from the federal government that sit in Mississippi and MDA and try to bring them in to do more business in Mississippi.
Okay.
And with the space launch system, we represent, through our relationships with MDA, the growth of organizations like the private industry that's out here, but specifically things like Aerojet Rocketdyne, who are providing the engines, the actual physical engines are being, manufactured, they're being produced right here in Mississippi at Sine Space Center. So those are the engines that we tested, and then they're going to take the astronauts into space this week.
Okay. So, Mike, are there any plans for humans to return to the moon's surface?
Absolutely. So this mission is to, first of all, orbit the moon, which is the first, again, as I mentioned, the first time we've done it since 1972.
Wow.
And also I read a statistic that's kind of interesting. 75% of humans weren't alive during the last time that someone was on the moon.
That's incredible.
So next mission for this year is to go and orbit the moon. There's going to be a second launch. Artemis III is going to launch next year in 2027. And its job is a test mission, but they're going to go up there and they're going to dock with landers to train the astronauts on how to do that in space, so that when in 2028 on Artemis 4 and 5, both of those missions will set foot on the moon. And the long-term goal, and actually it's not even long-term, we're talking about like in the next 5 years. Jared Isaacman, the new NASA administrator from Donald Trump's administrator, he appointed. His plan is to establish permanent moon colonies that Americans and NASA employees and military can go up there and do research and really establish the ultimate high ground for the United States and the United States defense systems. So this is a pretty awesome 5 to 6 year window we have for space. And again, it's really awesome because just, a mile from where I sit at Stennis Space Center, they test the vehicles that are going to get us there. So and on that note, of all the companies that are even launching, not just NASA, like put aside NASA, Relativity Space, Rocket Lab, Blue Origin, SpaceX, all of those companies, save a handful, have actually come through Stennis Space Center and tested some article, some position for one of their engines that's going to space. So Mississippi plays an enormous role in this very near future of space, hopeful dominance by the United States. And this is, so again, really, really exciting time for America and for Mississippi.
Well, and just for an historical perspective, the big Apollo rockets, right, were actually, the engines were created there.
That's right. They were tested here. They built the entire. Yeah, that's right. The rockets, whenever they built Stennis in the 60s, and the idea was, we're going to build something that you can come and make a ton of noise because they're, as you'd imagine, pretty loud. So they built it. They moved towns here in Hancock County. They moved 6 or 7 communities out, and you can still see remnants of them as you come in and around the site. But they have 13,000 acres that the actual Stennis Space Center sits on, and that's surrounded by over 120,000 acre acoustical and vibration buffer zone. So they built this place to test the massive engines and the massive rockets that were on the Apollo program. And that transitioned to the shuttle program and the subsequent program. So this place has been testing everything that NASA has been sending to space since the 60s. It's a pretty awesome thing for Mississippi.
Well, I can attest to that because I was in grade school in the 60s, and we did a field trip down there. They used to have a big auditorium, as I recall, we assembled in, and we got a presentation and got a tour of the facilities. And, yeah, you can't comprehend how big those engines are, man. It's just incredible. But, yeah, what a feather in the cap for the great state of Mississippi to hold such an integral role in America's space program, and here we are again.
That's right, and we've said for a long time this is one of the best kept secrets for the space industry is Stennis Space Center. I personally, and I think I can speak for MDA too, we don't want it to be a secret anymore. There's a lot of companies coming out here and doing really cool things. I mentioned Relativity and Rocket Lab. Both of them have invested over $500 million between the two of them, and that number is going to keep growing to build test facilities here because there's not many places on this planet where you can do what we're doing. Blue Origin tests out in West Texas, and they built their own facilities, and it's wonderful place to do rocket testing. But the thing that they're running into is encroachment from just people living there. This is, in rural, middle of nowhere West Texas, an hour and a half from El Paso. You look at a map, ain't much around it. And they're running into problems of being able to test. Relativity and Rocket Lab aren't experiencing that here. And that's why they came here. And that's why they're using our workforce. They're using all the cool infrastructure and impressive federal investment made by the federal government here in Mississippi to create vehicles that are going to take their payloads to space. It's a really exciting time, not just for NASA, but for the broader space economy. Look at SpaceX. I don't know. I'm sure you saw this, Gerard. SpaceX in the next couple of weeks is going to have an IPO.
Yeah, saw it.
They've been privately held for a long time. That's going to be the largest IPO probably in the history of IPOs. They're looking to raise $75 billion on a $1.75 trillion valuation.
Yeah,
with the mergers of XAI and Tesla and X.com. With SpaceX, they're really vertically integrating to something pretty impressive.
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago, I had the honor of joining your colleague Richard in the morning to talk about data centers in space. In fact, I wrote an op-ed for SuperTalk.com. We are actually as a state not just positioned to help get vehicles into space, but we're going to have the ground infrastructure for data centers that we're going to need to be able to have these data centers that Elon Musk and other people are envisioning in orbit. There's so much cool stuff happening right now. And if I am a parent, I have 2 young kids, and I've been trying to get them super excited about space and about, what's coming because there are incredible jobs in the space industry that exist right here in Mississippi, and they're just going to grow. So, Gerard, this is a pretty awesome time as a Mississippian, and we should be really proud of that.
Really is pretty neat. Yeah, Elon Musk, I don't want to say he's betting the entire company on the success of the program, his space program and ambitions, but it's a significant component of the company's vision and where he intends it to be. And this notion, he's always thinking outside the box of deploying data centers in space is so fascinating and intriguing, but it makes perfect sense.
Absolutely. I mean, it goes back to the data dominance and is high ground in space, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if we can't lead as a country the data race and the AI race, then, and look, there's all kinds of concerns and we can have those conversations, but the fact of the matter is, if we're not in control of that data in outer space, right, and both of those things I think work together in this, we're going to fall behind other countries. We're going to fall behind China.
Completely agree.
And we don't want our phones to be able to have to pass data through Chinese systems. We want those things to be passing through American systems, American built, American managed. So, and that's not fear mongering. That's not, I'm not trying to scare everybody. This is just facts of the matter. You having access. I bank on my phone. I'm sure you check occasionally,
Sure.
Your bank account on your phone.
Sure.
That's something really simple. Everyone's worried about their social media sites. Put that aside. Think about access to your dollars. Those are the types of things we got to be thinking about. And getting into space and being the leaders in that is how we secure those things moving forward.
Yeah, totally agree. And then, of course, there's another conversation about quantum computing and the need for us to achieve and maintain superiority in that realm as well, as I'm sure you're well aware. And all this stuff works hand in hand. AI, quantum computing, data center, all the above. Davis, it's been fascinating, and congratulations on all the success of the Mississippi Enterprise for Technology. It's really cool. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Gerard.
You in Mississippi.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
Now, on to the real part.
Dynamite! On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Take your protein pills and put your helmet on. Ground control to Major Tom. 7, 6. Commencing countdown, engines on. 3, 2, check ignition, and may God's love be with you.
Welcome back, everyone. It's middays. That's about as appropriate as it could be for that discussion with Davis Pace, President and CEO of Mississippi Enterprise for Technology, and all the space discussion.
That's I did some napkin math to put into perspective what will be hopefully accomplished tomorrow afternoon, or if not tomorrow afternoon, shortly thereafter.
Okay.
Because tomorrow afternoon is the opening of the launch window, and what that means is it opens, and then they have a period of days where they can launch pretty much at any point, and then that window closes, and they got to wait a while just because of orbits and stuff.
Yeah.
But every mission into space since 1972 has dealt with about 800 to 1,000 miles from the Earth's surface.
Okay.
The moon is 250,000 miles away. And they're going to orbit that and come back on a 10-day mission. To put that in perspective, the last 50-some-odd years, since 1972, all of our missions would be the equivalent of starting in Biloxi, driving to Corinth, and driving back to Biloxi. If that's the distance to the International Space Station, the vast majority of missions have gone there, then to go to the moon, you wouldn't be driving from Biloxi to Corinth and back to Biloxi. You would be driving along the equator 10 times around the Earth. that's the difference in distance that they will be traveling in the Artemis II.
That is amazing. That totally is amazing. I think it's exciting, and I'm proud of Mississippi for its participation in that effort, its contribution to that. And I'm serious. I think I was in the third grade when we did a field trip down, and that was the 60s. It hadn't been there very long, and that's when they were testing those big old Apollo 5 engines, as I recall.
Saturn V.
Saturn V, pardon me. Part of the Apollo program, right. Yeah, Saturn V. Thank you. And those were giant rockets with giant engines. 5, as I recall. 2 on either side, and then the one in the center that was a little larger. That is a bunch of thrust and power to, of course, break through gravity. That's the whole purpose of that power. That gravity's pretty strong, it turns out. I say that when I'm playing golf all the time. I miss a putt. That dang gravity got me again. And
that's the math that will drive you crazy, because the more weight you add for fuel to escape gravity, the harder it is to escape gravity because you're adding more weight.
100%. Something on a much smaller scale airplanes have to do every time they fly. You got to figure all the weight and balance, and all that's done, of course, online. In the old days, you had to do it on your clipboard as a pilot before we can get out of here. They literally would add up the weight of all the baggage and estimate somewhat that of the passengers, and then the fuel on board. And there's a bunch of calculations that get into that. It's all automated now, by the way. But you can imagine what that entails when you're trying to go to outer space. Right. Incredible. Speaking of people who are in outer space, that would be the United States Senate. So this is so good. TMZ, you know, the media outlet TMZ. What does that stand for? Did it used to stand for the movie zone or something like that? I don't know. What does it stand for? TMZ.
30 Mile Zone.
Okay. I knew it was something.
It's all the news within 30 miles of Hollywood.
Gotcha. So they're asking people to submit photos of legislators, members of Congress on vacation. I can't quit laughing at Lindsey Graham at Disney World. By the way, he's in Fantasyland. How appropriate is that? And they got Ted Cruz clearly sitting in first class, and he's checking his phone. Somebody's there, recognized him and took the photo and sent it to TMZ. Also, it's Bernie Sanders. Oh, my gosh. So they've got a gallery out there. And here's Lindsey Graham boarding Space Mountain. I'm not even kidding. That's just so funny. Ted Cruz at the airport. Marsha Blackburn, she's coming down an escalator. Bernie Sanders in first class on his phone, leaving Washington, D.C. on the 27th. Robert Garcia in a casino in Vegas on 3/29. Buddy Carter at the airport after a Suns baseball game. Oh, this is so good. Senator John Barrasso at the Denver airport. Look, there's nothing to this, of course, with respect to these are just people doing people things. I get that. Except the government shut down and your butt needs to be in Washington to address these issues on behalf of the American people. That's the point. By the way, Senator Amy Klobuchar, she, of course, from Minnesota, and she ran for president as well. She's wearing a T-shirt. It looks like she's at her high school, at a Minnesota high school, not necessarily hers. And on the front of the T-shirt, it says, "You are doing a good job." This is great. So kudos to TMZ for even thinking about this and requesting of its readers, hey, if you see any of these senators on vacation, shoot us their photos, and there's a QR code with a link where you can upload the photos. It's the power of the internet and all this novel technology we all carry around in our pocket. It's pretty cool, but this is my favorite, though. Lindsey Graham at Fantasyland. That is so good. Oh, my gosh. Can't get over it. Up there in Wisconsin, the dairy state, Governor Tony Evers, he used his veto power to protect Wisconsin students in public schools from a federal voucher scam. That, of course, a provision of he's referring to of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that would allow folks to contribute individually up to $1,700 to a fund that would be operated by a scholarship granting organization, an SGO. That $1,700, you would receive a federal tax credit for such contribution, and the SGO would then dole that out and then run a program. Details, by the way, and the code itself and guidelines yet to be delivered and published. But this would allow you to contribute, and then these SGOs set up in the states, by the way, these would be nonprofits. They would then run a program that would allocate those monies in accordance to whatever the federal guidelines are, with the federal guidelines, and whatever we can add to that as a state in creating a program. And those would go to students that choose to attend a school different than the one they're assigned to by government, the public school. It could be for a private school, a charter school, homeschool, all the above. And so states have to opt into the program. The state of Mississippi, as you know, has already done so. But we're just waiting on details to be released to understand the mechanics of the program so that those who wish to contribute may do so. And then, of course, we've got to stand up some of these scholarship granting organizations that would manage those funds and distribute those to applicants for the purpose of attending a school other than the one they're assigned to. But Governor Evers up there in Wisconsin, he's proud of the fact the Democrat has vetoed, essentially, has declined to participate in the program. He says this would put kids at risk and widen existing gaps between haves and have-nots in Wisconsin. They can dream up a litany of excuses, can they not, Rhino, for people to be restricted to the school the government says they got to go to. Man, they can come up with crazy excuses. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From theSeabrook.com, Middays with Gerard Gibert. It is on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
The grassroots bumming us into this segment. Speaking of the 60s. We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. We appreciate you being with us today. We got Representative Sam Creekmore in the house, as the great late Paul Gallo used to say, at 12:05. By the way, Rhino, once again, liberals challenged with math in attempting to gaslight people with math. The governor made this statement, the governor of Wisconsin. That would be Tony Evers. He's proudly declining to participate in the program that was incorporated in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that would allow taxpayers to contribute up to $1,700 into a fund operated, managed by a scholarship granting organization known as an SGO. Those would be established and created at the state level within the states. They would receive these monies from individual contributors, and then they would allocate those out in accordance with the federal provisions. Again, still awaiting final details and guidance and rules, but they would dole those out as scholarships, if you will, to students that they could use, much like a school choice program is, that they then could use to fund tuition or the cost of an optional educational setting, is optional to the one the government says they got to go to if they want a free education. You're going to this school whether you like it or not. That's what government presently says. That's our current environment. $1,700. That's the maximum that is eligible for a tax credit. Now, you can give more than that, but the federal government is only going to offset $1,700. Okay, so the governor here talks about how this could, you hear this all the time. This is the tired old argument, is it not, that opponents of education freedom express. You're siphoning off public dollars from the public schools, right? That's like a top complaint that they register. Well, here's what he says. Estimates indicate that this private voucher program will cost American taxpayers billions of dollars, with some projecting cost as high as $51 billion a year. So I got curious about that. That just sounds like a lot, doesn't it? $51 billion in $1,700 increments? That's a lot. So it turns out that's roughly $30 million. Roughly $30 million. Well, guess how many students there are public school in the country? 49. So you're saying that roughly 3/4 of them, this would be sufficient to create 3/4? I don't get it. I really don't. Just looking at it on a per-student basis. Now, like I said, it's certainly the rules at this point don't appear to limit the amount appropriated out, just the amount eligible for a tax credit upon donation. I don't know. That just sounds like some more of this fuzzy math that the Democrats like to use to make their point, and really just to fearmonger and gin up frustration and opposition by their base. So I would just say to you, Governor, all you're really doing is standing in the way of what could be a life-changing event for a student, for a child. That's what you're doing, in my view here. Now, I know that there are many folks out there that believe there's absolutely no way to improve on government compulsory is the right word, education. Right, Ronald? Nope. There's no way you can make that better. I heard that last week in the school choice debate from Nancy Loom over there at the Parents Campaign in Mississippi, to hear them talk. We've got K through 12 utopia in the state of Mississippi. Why in the world? You must be out of your mind if you think that you can improve this situation for your child. No way you would want to transfer them out of the public school the government essentially says you got to go to. You can choose to go to a different one, but the government ain't going to help. And they don't want the people to help either. In this case, even private people. So this, like I say, always reminds me of the rather infamous incident where Bernie Sanders said, why do we have all this deodorant in the grocery store? We don't need all this choice. But yet we had Barack Obama during the Obamacare debate saying we want people to have choice and competition, right? That's what they told us we were going to receive. Did that work out? No. Zero. On the C Spire text line, that's 601-879-4395. Johnny in West Point, we were talking earlier in the program how the president really is scolding Europe, our European allies, for their lack of willingness to become involved in this situation in Iran. He's saying, you need to get involved and help us reopen the strait. And by the way, you need to find a different supplier for your oil and gas, because a lot which you obtain comes through that strait, and that's going to have a downward effect on your economy. Johnny in West Point says Europe has to look back at history and realize that if it were not for the United States, they would be speaking German right now. I completely agree there, Johnny. They seem to have forgotten that. Let's see what else do we have here on the C Spire text line. Oh, somebody wanted to hear Randy and Starkville. We'll crank this up for you later. Randy wants to hear the Strait of Hormuz clip again. It was awesome that Rhino came across that, played it for us. We were talking about this Supreme Court case. Decision just handed down that overturned the Colorado law that prevents mental health counselors from working with students who have expressed a desire to change their sex, their gender, identify as one other than that which God bestowed upon them at birth. On the C Spire text line, make the counselor a drag queen, a dude in a dress, as Rhino says, and Colorado would give him a grant. Go make talking all kids into questioning their gender. Yeah, to make, I think is what he meant. Yeah, I agree. It's upside down completely. Just this notion that you just can't counsel a child that's dealing with an incredibly difficult situation. Clearly they're confused. Is there anything at a young age that you could point to, Rhino, that is the epitome of being confused based on your mental capacity as a youth than wondering about your gender? I can't think of anything else that would top that. That's pretty fundamental, I would say. So working with kids in that sensitive time period in their life where they're not fully baked mentally, it's part of the development process from birth to adulthood. It makes sense. Maybe we just need to run the cobwebs out of your brain there instead of just jumping to, let's go to the surgeon and get your genitals mutilated. That's what the liberals actually promote. That's what's really bothersome. It's not, hey, let's talk about that for a while. Oh, great, let's get down to the surgeon right now. Let's do it. Right? Unbelievable. And there are all kinds of audio and video clips attesting to verifying what I just said. I'm not making this up. You know that. There's the nutcase professor in Vanderbilt. I'll never forget that one. We played it here on the program. Somebody leaked it, and they had all the medical educators at the medical school there gathered together in an auditorium, and this lady was talking about the gender-affirming care program that the University Medical Center had just adopted. And you remember she was talking about how lucrative it would be.
Patients for life.
Right, because you're going to need health care because you're going against nature. So you got to have all kinds of drugs and therapies and stuff just to make everything work so you can survive. And then there's countless number of adults who said, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that, right? Who regret it now. But somehow, and for some reason, the left's just married to that stuff. They worship it. Unbelievable. Leslie in Grenada wants the CCR song, the text of that y'all play. Leslie, if you're talking about the one that the house band plays, Born on the Bayou is one that we played, and Have You Ever Seen the Rain is the other. Those are the two CCR songs. I think that's what you're talking about. Rhino plays those here as well as some other CCR songs. That's part of our bumper music repertoire. Hopefully that helped you. Let's see. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio with Foreigner with Jukebox Hero. The market's looking good, guys. Stay with us.
way up a Mississippi.
You know what that means.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
We'll do it live.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Down at the Astoria, the scene was changing. Bingo and rock were pushing out X-rating. We were the first band to bomb it in the bar and find the distance to the stage too far. Meanwhile, it's getting late at 10 o'clock.
So we couldn't get an agreement to ease this constraint of alcohol caused by the problems at the alcohol beverage control distribution facility. We couldn't get that through. You know what else we didn't get is any money for the public employees retirement system. We did get some reforms to the Tier 5 of the program that was enacted last year. And that, as you know, was met with a fair amount of concern and complaint, especially the provision that would have required 35 years of service to retire at any age. And so that was dialed back to 30 in accordance with the Tier 4. So it's level with that again. And then the other major reform was a retiree can return to work within 30 days, after 30 days. Under prior law, it required 90 days. They had to sit out 90 days. And they can also earn more than they could previously to still draw benefits and work. That's thought to help alleviate some of the teacher shortage that we are currently experiencing in the state. But, Rhino, as far as stabilizing the finances of the program, that didn't happen. In fact, the truth is the two provisions I just described actually contribute to its insolvency. That was the purpose of passing those to start with. The first one in particular, the 30 to 35 years, that was part of the purpose of that. You stay in the program longer to contribute, building up, of course, the reserves in the fund. So that got reversed, but there was talk, of course, by both sides of the Capitol to infuse a big bunch of money into the program and then have a recurring revenue stream thereafter. The Senate would just write a check out of the general fund for that recurring revenue stream to the tune of $50 million a year over 10. The House said, hey, pass this mobile sports betting bill, and all the proceeds can go to PERS. Neither of those happened, nor did a big infusion of cash. So the bottom line is, taxpayers, you're still on the hook for the unfunded liability of the PERS program. I understand it's a snapshot of time. I wonder how the PERS asset portfolio is performing, given that we've seen the markets really experience a sell-off over the last month since the war. Now, today it's looking good. It's regaining some of that loss, but still a ways to go. Does affect the investment portfolio, which is heavily relied upon, of course, to fund current and future benefits in the program. So we didn't get much done there. You may have heard on our news, J.T. Mitchell doing the news update on the break, that there was legislation early in the session that would have eliminated the 1.5% sales tax that our farmers pay on certain equipment purchases. There was talk about eliminating that to provide some relief to the farmers. That didn't make it across the finish line as well. Just a bunch of stuff, huh, Rhonda? We couldn't even get a building name there at Alcorn, as you pointed out,
with unanimous approval from both houses.
I don't get that. How in the world could you go from 174 to 0 till we can't get it out of conference? Explain that. Man, I don't get it. So we got that going on, and looks like the SHIELD Act, which we just talking about something that did make it through, Secretary of State Michael Watson yesterday, that would incorporate some requirements on the part of the Secretary of State and our circuit clerks and the elections commissioners to ensure that only American citizens are on the rolls. I continue to get in friendly discussions with people on the left on social media about this concept and the SAVE Act at the federal level, the SHIELD Act at the state level, and they continue to spout this nonsense that this is going to disenfranchise and suppress voters. And if we on the right, and I think largely speaking, the majority of Republicans and people on the right support this measure and these measures. We've got a federal version, a state version. Well, we know that certainly from our elected officials, which are mostly Republican. But I started thinking about, well, you saying that you're saying it's going to disenfranchise and also lead to voter suppression. Well, what about Republican voters? Are they exempt from the voter suppression you say this is going to cause? Are you basically saying that Republican voters are just more adept at meeting these requirements than Democrat voters? Because if it's going to disenfranchise and suppress, it seems like that would be across the board. Well, what are you worried about? We're all going to lose voters. That's your theory, not mine, by the way. You know what I'm saying there. Why is it only Democrat voters that would be disenfranchised?
That's why it's best to just laugh at the bad faith, bleeding heart blowhards.
Fox News, SuperTalk News, and it's Representative Sam Creekmore.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is hour 3, the afternoon portion of Middays, coming at you live from the Element Wealth Studio. It's our great pleasure to welcome now Representative Sam Creekmore. He serves District 14, Union County, serves as the chairman of the Public Health and Human Services Committee. Representative Creekmore, always good to have you in the Element Wealth Studio. Thanks for coming on.
Always enjoy it. Thank you.
Yeah, man. So you guys are winding it down. I was down at the Capitol this morning. I know there's been some midnight oil burn, shall we say, over the last few days. Always is the case when we get to this part of the session. And, of course, bills have gone through both chambers, come back, put in conference. Some survive the conference process, some don't, and then they get adopted and sent up for final passage. But we'll start with this. The session kind of started with a wallop from weather across the northern third of our state. Where you're from there, New Albany and Union County, was struck as well, as was that entire region. Where do we stand on all that?
Well, we're probably, I know the city of New Albany, and I talk to the mayor pretty much weekly, if not daily, but we're about 85% through in the city as far as the cleanup effort goes, and the county's about 65%.
Yeah. Okay.
But so it's moving along, but it's had a tremendous economic hit to the municipalities in that area.
Well, especially Oxford, that relies heavily, of course, on the students. And when you got schools shut down and didn't reconvene, delayed that for a while, they weren't there in the town spending money.
That's right. And then, of course, the city, I think in New Albany today, it's spent about $4 million.
Okay.
And in New Albany, it's unique. We don't have a co-op for our light, gas, and water. It's owned by the city.
Okay.
So New Albany Light, Gas, and Water, they've spent $15 million.
Wow.
And then Union County add another $20 million to that. So we're at $39 million right now in Union County.
Just cleaning up, recovering, huh?
And, of course, light, gas, and water is putting back power lines. But,
sure.
Yeah, so this bill that we passed recently, and I know you've had talk about it on the show several times, but that's gonna really help some of these counties.
So did we get that right? I didn't look at because we know the story. What an ordeal that was, going up to the governor and then it being vetoed, and then had to go back to the drawing board. So where did we land?
Yeah,
on that?
we landed at 2% interest.
Okay.
Per year.
Okay, not month,
not
per year.
month. We're not punishing them for being in an ice storm.
Okay, 2%.
Yeah, So I think it's fair, and we just need to get that money available.
Yeah.
I mean, these counties and cities are spending it daily.
Well, the kind of numbers you were just talking about, I dare say that municipalities, and in fact, when you talk about the light, gas, and water, I didn't realize that. That is unique. I'm not sure there's another city that has all three of the major utility services, right? Okay.
New Albany, Holly Springs, and Oklahoma.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
So, but that's a big hit, and my guess is they don't have money sitting in the bank for that purpose.
Well, they borrowed from the street department.
Yeah.
So there's certain funds, so they're robbing Peter to pay Paul to get through this.
Okay. Well, it's necessary that, of course, we get this rebuilding effort done and fully recovered. That's critical to the economy of those areas.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Not to mention the people that just need those services.
And you've been to New Albany. It's a tremendously growing, booming town. And to have the downtown shut down for a week is a huge economic impact.
Big deal.
You mentioned Oxford, same thing in New
Same
Albany.
deal. Yeah. Well, okay. Well, we certainly didn't expect that when you guys got back into session for 2026 shortly thereafter.
Well, it was really unique, that it hit us. We lost power on a Saturday night, and the speaker called and said, "I need this bill out," and it was the biomarker bill.
Oh yeah,
which I know you've talked about it here.
Yeah,
it's very important,
right?
And I was like, I got to figure out a way to get to Jackson, so I went through Tupelo to Starkville to Jackson to get that bill out. But once I got on the other side of Tupelo, it was like nothing had ever happened. It was truly amazing.
Yeah. There's like a line there, and everything north of that was kind of devastated, and everything south couldn't tell anything happened.
Right. And then once you got a little bit further north, it was okay again.
That's right. Well, we'll talk about that biomarker bill because we've been talking this morning about all the various measures that didn't make it, didn't fare quite as well. But this was a big one, an important one that I think deserves a little attention, and it flowed through your committee.
I do too. And there's so many things in healthcare that are preventable, and we talk about it. You and I've talked about it.
Yeah.
Hypertension, all that. But here, cancer happens sometimes genetically. Sometimes it's caused by mankind and our habits. But either way, when it strikes, or even before it strikes, there are things we can do, such as the biomarker testing, that can really put us way ahead of the game health-wise and cost-wise. And this is one of them. It just makes sense that insurance would cover that. And then not only does it tell you exactly what's wrong, where it's wrong, it also tells you the best medicine to be prescribed or the best procedure. So it gives the patients a better quality of life, gives the doctors a better direction, and it saves money.
Well, that's the question I was about to ask you. The insurers, what has been their reaction?
Yeah, I've had no pushback, but I've heard some people, on the other side say, there's some pushback, but really it's just tough to argue when we presented the case. And of course, Miss Uri, Casey's wife on our side, who
Representative Casey Uri.
Yes, sir, Representative Casey Uri, and whom we named the bill after. And it was just a very emotional and very personal thing on the House side to get this done. And it's just such a good bill.
Yeah.
2 years ago, we did the metastatic cancer step bill, where if you were in the throes of cancers, very seriously, metastatic cancer, insurance companies have the step method where you start with the cheapest, possibly least effective, and then you work your way up. Well, if you're in the metastatic cancer part of cancer, then you don't have time to do the step therapy. So we passed that bill a couple of years ago. We were able to remove the repealer this year so that it's now permanently law in the state of Mississippi. But we were able to remove the repealer because it's doing just what the biomarker bill will do. It's saving money in the end, and it's saving lives and extending lives.
Okay.
So those are two great examples of how we've been able to make a difference in healthcare in Mississippi.
Yeah, well, I totally understand and agree, and I think those were good measures. We continue to see reports that our rural hospitals, all hospitals to some extent, are struggling financially, but in particular some of our rural hospitals are, just based on the payer mix. And then there have been some federal reforms that could affect them negatively as well. But one thing you guys did this year is passed a measure that would allow folks to to essentially receive a tax credit for providing some financial assistance.
Has that gotten all the way through?
I thought so, Ronnie. Will you look that up? It's a bill that if you contribute to a fund that would assist financially a rural hospital,
right,
you get a tax break for it, tax credit.
Right.
I think. Right.
Absolutely. So, and don't you? I think you can determine which hospital it goes to.
You can designate it. I believe that's right.
And so that's a great bill, and one we had talked about during session, and of course it can help, and you, especially if you're in say New Albany, where I'm from, if I wanted to go to that hospital, which I have a great hospital, but it really gives people in the community a chance to feel like they're really helping out their hospital.
Well, I applaud this, as I talk about many times on the program. Let's call on the private sector to help out here. Give them a little help, and they'll help in reciprocation.
Another thing we've done, which I'm really praying will help these rural hospitals, is we pass CON reform, which you and I've had many conversations about, and you've helped through this process. But in the bill that the governor recently signed, it's specifically for rural hospitals doing away with certificate of need, allowing rural hospitals that are in a population of 15,000 or less be exempt from one CON. They get to pick it. And so we've had many calls, or I have, from hospitals saying, tell me again what this – but they're already looking at ways they can provide another service. And then in the Delta region, they're exempt from 2. Okay. And several of those hospitals are already in the process of getting some new service.
But don't you feel like, Representative Creekmore, even if the Department of Health would approve their certificate of need for whatever expansion or investment they wanted to make, just the process itself deters them from even trying?
Oh, it does. And it's expensive. You hire a lawyer. And so that has been removed, or that barrier, and then we'll study this over time, and maybe it'll lead to more, and I think it will, lead to more removals of services from CON.
Well, we're chipping away at it.
We're chipping away. and I hear the music, but that's just part of the process that we go through. And you can do the big omnibus bill, or you can do step by step and see that the sky didn't fall.
No, I think it's good stuff. Representative Sam Creekmore is our guest in the Element Well studio. He chairs the Public Health and Human Services Committee in the Mississippi House. We're coming right back.
Hey, this is Bob, and if you're...
Check it out. Let's do this.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
When I wake up in the morning, love, and the sunlight hurts my eyes, and something without warning, love, bears heavy on my mind. Then I look at you.
We're back with you in the Element Well studio. We're visiting with Representative Sam Creekmore in the Mississippi House, chairs Public Health and Human Services. So certainly the biomarker bill, I think, was a major accomplishment, and I think it's a good thing for Mississippians. And then we were just looking at this measure that flowed through the Ways and Means Committee, because it's more budgetary oriented, but in an effort to maybe encourage Mississippians to contribute to a fund that would provide financial assistance to the struggling rural hospitals in our state. But then the other big thing that you were just talking about was at least repealing some of the CON, or reforming it somewhat to grant some exceptions that make sense.
Well, we need to remove barriers to let our hospitals help themselves, and that's a real barrier. You know, we didn't talk about House Bill 3, which we passed last year, that the governor vetoed for really another reason, not specific to what
related to CON, right? Yeah,
but you know, we doubled the capital expenditures in House Bill 3, in which, you know, maybe some of these people don't know, but in the Certificate of Need law, there's a limit that you can spend depending on whether it's equipment or addition to your building, and if you go above that limit, you have to get permission from the Department of Health. And those are capital expenditure thresholds that you have to pay a lawyer and a fee and an application fee to get permission to spend more money.
Yeah.
And so we didn't do away with them. We doubled them. But that's the kind of thing that thwarts innovation and
investment.
And so we need to remove that. And so we didn't remove it. We doubled it. But, you know, that could be the next step.
And so if some of these institutions, if they contacted you and said, hey, look, we've been thinking about doing something, this may get us off the peg.
Absolutely. The North Mississippi Hospital in Tupelo, they were concerned because we followed it up with 1622 CON bill. They were like, well, is this going to repeal the? Yeah. Because we need those capital expenditures. Sure. I said, no, sir. It's going to stay the same.
Okay. Well, that's good news.
It is good.
What else did you guys handle this year in your committee?
It's interesting, and we talked about this early on, and I really there were so many people, and I credit the Lord for this too, that we passed Ibogaine. And
that's right.
It's a natural plant-based compound from the iboga plant found in Africa, but it's had tremendous success treating people for PTSD and addiction. Unfortunately, Schedule I in America, in other countries, say Mexico, it's not. It's legal, and so many Americans, many veterans are traveling from America to Mexico to be treated, thousands, and they're on the verge of ending their life, some of them, and they go get this treatment, and 80%, or what the numbers are right now, are coming back. They're made whole. They're living productive lives. They're back with their families. Families are reunited. So we took this in Mississippi, and we created an FDA trial program for Ibogaine, not just for veterans, for people suffering addiction and mental health issues, and there's just a whole host. But the results outside our borders are so staggering. I felt it was, and so did our committee, felt it was, it cannot be ignored. It'd be irresponsible to ignore this because, as you know, the gold standard, the best we achieve typically in addiction is about a 30% success rate. That's the best. Here we are looking at something that, so don't ignore it. We used opioid settlement money, the non-abatement money, created the FDA trial program. It sailed through the House and the Senate, and the governor signed it. And so Mississippi is now a leader in Ibogaine studies along with Texas. And we're actually partnering. It's a partnership that the bill set up. So we're partnering with Texas, and we're going to lead the country. And hopefully this moonshot of a therapy that can really make people whole.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's good stuff, and I was a little worried about it at first. I didn't know how the lawmakers would react, but seemed to embrace it.
Well, I was too, and you know, I also kept waiting on the other shoe to fall. Like, these numbers can't be right. You know, there was a Stanford test, and the numbers. You know, it's not FDA numbers, but it's still so incredibly positive that we couldn't ignore it. And then, as we brought Mississippi veterans in, Mississippi nurses, Mississippi doctors who had been through the treatment, who've helped people go through the treatment, true heroes that are in Mississippi, that are in the Jackson area, who were on the verge of very serious harming themselves or couldn't maintain their family life, go through this treatment, and now they walk in and it's just like anybody else. I mean, awesome. It's truly extraordinary. So hopefully we can revolutionize, especially with all the opioid issues that we've been dealing with and all that. So it's a promising treatment we're going to have here in Mississippi.
Yeah, no doubt about it. My son works for a pharmaceutical company that makes an opioid use disorder treatment drug. It's injection type drug, and unbelievable success with that.
Yeah.
How it just kind of curbs the addiction itself.
And that's
lots of technology in that realm.
Exactly, and that's it's the withdrawal symptoms that Ibogaine deals with, and it
right.
sounds like
that's right.
your son's drug. That if he can remove that, you don't have those cravings anymore. That you're over half the battle there.
Well, the physicians that are prescribing it that he calls on, they absolutely swear by it. I mean, they're in the trenches working with patients, on a daily basis, and he's got the territory, the I-20 corridor, if you will, from here to Shreveport and over to Meridian. So, yeah, it's lots of new technology in that realm that maybe can help us solve some of these problems, and what a way to turn around someone's life, and
yes,
and also it's you can't ignore it. There's an economic bent to this as well.
It's been well documented the billions it's cost us, and not just Mississippi, the whole country.
Yeah. So, well, that's super good stuff. We still, of course, as you know, we've got a myriad of health challenges, not just health care, but health challenges in our state. Dr. Dan Edmey, the chief health officer, he's passionate about this, and he's a good one.
Isn't it really – we know how great he is because we deal with him pretty much on a daily basis, but then to see him get national recognition for the head of the CDC.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's just –
what an honor.
What an honor just to be considered. And, I mean, I don't know if they've chosen yet, but, I mean, he was right there at the finish line.
On the short list of 3.
I've told him, I said, I hope you don't get it. We don't want to lose you.
Yeah.
So it is a tremendous honor, but that's who we have working to help solve health issues in the state of Mississippi, and that's just tremendous honor.
He's valuable to the state, and I don't want to lose him as well, but if anybody's listening, he has our wholehearted endorsement.
Absolutely.
What a great deal it would be, I think, for our country, for him.
Yes,
He's just a no-nonsense guy that truly does care. I mean, it's clear.
Truly passionate.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
No doubt. But we got some work to do there in our state, and I know that's what you guys are addressing.
I'm going to spend a lot of the off-season studying the infant mortality, and there's some things, and I'd love to share with you as I get it fleshed out a little more, that we can do that I think can really transform our infant mortality rates.
Education is so important, isn't it? Just informing people.
It is.
They don't know, and it seems like there's something we could do, Representative Creekmore, in our schools.
Oh,
I mean, starting in the middle schools, maybe.
I recognize that, and I had a bill that addressed that. Of course, it had several other things too, but maybe we break it apart and go at it piece by piece, kind of like we've done with the CON.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. Education in just about all forms of healthcare issues that we have, overweight, diabetes,
100%.
Let's start with education.
Well, just getting a little simple test to see if how you test for your blood sugar, your hypertension, high blood pressure, et cetera. I actually thought about, why don't we just give away free lottery tickets to everybody to go stand in line and get their blood pressure taken, and serious about that.
That's a great idea.
I'm serious about it. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, I mean, and Dr. Eddie's even mentioned the health department sometimes will give away gifts or cards
100%
to get people to come in.
Same deal. Well, let's get the private sector to buy the lottery tickets that you guys can give away, and people can come in and get these free screenings. So, because these are easy problems to address. That
they're all preventable. Most of them are.
And address them before they develop into more acute problems.
And more expensive.
And a lot more expensive, right, which is a burden on all of us. Representative Sam Creekmore, thanks for coming in. I always enjoy it. Yeah, man.
Likewise.
We are taking a break right here. Half an hour of middays remains. Stay with us.
Take them into town, start washing all our worries down the drain. Rain is a good thing. Rain is a good thing. Rain is a good thing. Rain is a good thing.
From theSeabrook.com, Days with Gerard Gibert.
Welcome to our shop
on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Okay, now you have a good one.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio on the C Spire text line. Of course, that's 601-879-4395. It's Ben from Madison. He was talking about the medical cannabis program, the expansions to the program that the governor vetoed, and his rationale for that was it would allow people in other states to come into Mississippi and participate, access cannabis. And Ben says, well, they'd still have to go through the same process as a Mississippi resident. I don't understand why it's problematic. That's just what he said. What I read there, Ben, I'm not sure that the governor offered any additional color on his explanation there or on his veto decision. But that's where we stand on that. Mike from Corinth says, have gas prices gone up again, or did I miss something yesterday? Well, $4 on average is the mark that was hit yesterday, according to all the various news reports. So I think that was expected, just given the fact that about not quite a quarter of the world's total oil production flows through the strait, and that has been reduced to virtually nothing going through, and that's causing problems. However, the president said we might just end this thing without getting the strait reopened, and the markets are reacting very positively to that. With the bulls in charge, the NASDAQ up a whopping 678, the Dow up 908 at this moment. But still, I would say that until we get that oil flowing through the strait again, the price of oil will continue to increase, and that's going to have a negative effect on the market. Now, today it's down almost $1. It has been in the green for most of the session. It's still above $100, though, at 101. That's about 40% higher than it was when the war began a little over a month ago. Joey the trucker said, what about the rule doctors asked him about? That I know of too. Joey, of course, sent this while Representative Creekmore. What would that be in reference to there, Rhino? Do you know? I'm not sure what you're talking about. I apologize. I didn't see this when Representative Creekmore was in the studio, but he primarily did the representative that we have relaxed some of the CON laws and have fully relaxed them in the Delta, where there is the need for more health care supply, if you will. So that's a big thing. And then the ibogaine is another big thing. That bill got through. And the biomarker bill, those are things that the representative was sharing with us that he's quite proud of. Those are major accomplishments of measures that flowed through his Committee of Public Health and Human Services. Marvin from West Point, on the Willie Simmons building legislation, why have both chambers voted unanimously? Would the bill have to go to Congress or to conference? Well, so the way that sausage is made, it would be two separate bills that got. I think that's what happened, right? They got transferred. That's my understanding.
No, it was a bill in the Senate, got sent to the House.
Okay,
the House changed it. Strike all, substitution.
Okay, so it started out as
it's a one-page bill. It was literally just reformatting the language from the first page to another page. It's all on one page.
So, good question, Marvin. I was thinking it was two bills. That essentially has the same effect, though, because they can't, if they don't concur with it as received and they strike all, amend it, then it's got to go back across the hall, and at that point, they say, you know what, you took our bill and you gutted it and you changed it, the heck with all that, we're going to invite you to conference. So the reason is, Marvin, is that the bills passed unanimously, but after they were struck and gutted and then amended is what happened, based on your description.
I mean, it passed originally in the Senate, no changes. Goes to the House, they change the formatting of it.
Right.
It doesn't change anything about what the bill's doing.
Nothing material.
It literally just changes the way it looks on the page.
but that unfortunately requires it to go back to the Senate since they didn't concur with it.
Back to the Senate being too big for their britches.
Yeah. So, Senate,
you didn't take it the way I sent it to you, so you're not getting anything.
Senate passes it unanimously as is. House gets it, says, nope, we're going to change it. And they pass that unanimously. Goes back to the Senate. The Senate says, we're going to have to go to conference to hash out the differences that seem to be rather minute and without meaning, just innocuous, is one way to put it. Not material changes. Still necessitates conference because it got changed. They either got to concur with it as changed or they don't. They say, well, if you guys want to get to a conference, we can sort it out there, which is what happened, and then they couldn't get it out. So they each passed technically separate versions of the measure. That's the point, necessitating conference if one side doesn't concur with the others as drafted or changed. That's how we got here.
It's still asinine.
I agree. I'm just explaining the technical aspect of the process. You're right, and Marvin's point is right as well, that I don't get it. And the fact
it's like I said, I think it was last week when I said this to you during one of the breaks. There's a reason the ceilings are so tall at the Capitol building is because you got to have room for all those gigantic egos and big heads to not bump into each other, because how stupid and shoved up your own hind end do you have to be till you can't agree on one page of freaking legislation?
That pretty much epitomizes the whole session right there. And it's one page of legislation that simply puts a name on a building. That's all it does. Oh, my gosh. So, yeah, pretty harmful, and certainly a great honor for the great commissioner. But other than that, it's not like this will change your life. But we still couldn't get that through. Yeah, that's kind of sad, but that's certainly where we are. Incredible. Let's see. Paula Meridian says, since we're having so much money issues, then maybe more to go ahead and legalize marijuana and tax it at a special tax on top of the sales tax. That's certainly been discussed. I just don't see legislators in Mississippi supporting that sufficient to pass it, send it to the governor's desk, and I'm not sure the governor's position on that as well. But that's been talked about. Then in Hattiesburg, I've noticed that some Democrats many times fail to use decimals. This helps make their story 100 times crazier. Yeah, that's just in response to my just quick of the backside of a napkin math on what this governor in Wisconsin's rationale for opposing this provision in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that would allow taxpayers to contribute up to $1,700, receive a tax credit, federal tax credit. Those monies would be used for scholarships for students to attend a school other than the one the government says they got to go to. And the Democrats are proudly opting out. That's all that's required. Our governor has already opted in. We are in the program, and that's pretty consistent across party lines. Let's be honest, Rhino, this is more about the fact that it's Donald Trump than anything else. It has nothing to do with the policy, in my view. And this notion, this nonsense of it's $51 billion. No, it's not. That's just horse hockey. They seem to always get worried about that when it's something good like this, but when it comes to, just boosting all these other programs that are the wet dream of Democrats, the sky's the limit, right? There's no limit to how much money we have for that purpose. No limit. Don't worry about the revenue and the deficit. That's unimportant. What's important here is I need these programs so these people will reelect me and I can keep the gravy train going. Jeff and Carrollton says,
no matter what a Democrat says, a Democrat voter is going to buy it. So they're not really trying to convince the Democrat voters. They're trying to sow discord on the conservative side and talking in the language that conservatives speak in, which is the budget.
That is true. That's absolutely true. Jeff and Carrollton, I like what Delta Airlines did. They said they were not going to give politicians special quirks. So if you're not familiar with that story, folks, it is true that our elected members of the House and Senate at the U.S. level, they are able to bypass security. They get escorted. They're able to bypass it and not be burdened with the lines that we little people have to deal with, taking our shoes off and taking our stuff out of our bags and sometimes being searched and all that stuff. Not for you legislators, because you're special. Remember Nancy Mace getting all mad about a month ago because of the delays involved and her special escort getting her through the airport? Yeah, that is just privilege on steroids. But if you really want to get upset, Jeff, there's a recent report, like as of today, about taxpayers funding hundreds of thousands of dollars for private jets for senators. And there are restrictions on it, but they don't make sense to me. Coming right back with a final segment today.
On the John Deere properly set all controls before recording. All systems go.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. Final segment of Middays on the C Spire text line. Once again, let's go to our legislature meeting every other year to save that money we are wasting on them to pass nothing of significance. I would certainly be down for a biennial legislative structure. The state of Texas adheres to such a model, but they are in session longer. So I'm not sure that there's significant cost savings associated with that or not. So every year, short session. Every other year, double the number of days. Not sure it makes a difference. But certainly something that's worth exploring. That's for sure.
Might shrink some of the heads under the dome if they're not getting constant attention year in and year out.
That's true. Yeah, this is from Breitbart that Gary in the Berg sent. Iran's energy war. Netanyahu says the only long-term solution to Hormuz crisis is rerouting pipelines to the Mediterranean. Yeah, that would take a long time. I'm not sure what the expense of that would be relative to the current method of transport on the water. I don't know. So, and I don't know if the capacity.
Well, I mean, the Strait of Hormuz is a big chunk of Iran's oil exports, but it's not even all of Iran's exports.
That's right. It's not. It is about 22% of the total world's production, however.
And if you look at historically, that question has been raised in the past during the Iran-Iraq war. Saudi Arabia was having a hard time getting oil through the Strait, so they built a pipeline across their whole country.
Yep.
The east to west pipeline.
Yeah, to bypass the current shutdown.
And it's currently in use. I mean, they've ramped up its use since the start of the war to the point where on the west side of Saudi Arabia, they've had storage issues because they were pumping so much through.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So we'll see what happens with that. But the president says we're not even going to wait till the thing's closed, floating that idea that we might just shut down military operations even without the Strait being reopened. Russ and Rankin, can we have free choice regarding alcohol? A warehouse is not utopia. Well, I'm not sure what you mean by free choice, but there have been measures that would allow the shipment of alcohol into the state, direct ship, as it is called, bypassing ABC, still has to have the various taxes levied on it. We have wine, but not spirits. That bill failed this year, by the way. There was a bill to expand that direct ship program to include spirits. That didn't happen. The big issue is that the ABC warehouse generates revenue for the general fund. That's just been baked into the economic model of the state for quite some time. They actually produce a profit on the distribution function. That profit is money that goes to the general fund. It's about $60 million a year. And then, of course, they serve as an aggregator as well. So you got the aggregation function, because a lot of these alcohol producers don't want to ship onesie-twosie cases into retailers and casinos, restaurants, lounges. They just want to ship truckloads of it to ABC and let the ABC handle it and distribute it out from there. And then there's just the financial component. That's why this is hard. I'm all for it, by the way, totally privatizing it. It's just another example of stuff that was implemented decades ago in the state that now, honestly, is a hindrance, is a problem. And this is one of them.
It might be the only way to solve this problem is somebody bites the bullet and sues the state, calling that profit a tax.
That is true. That's a good point. Yep, I agree. So let's see what else we got here. I think we covered it all. But that's a good question. It comes up all the time. Oh, I know what I was going to talk to you about was somebody asked about raises for higher ed. No, that didn't happen. There were proposals early in the year to increase higher ed wages. Only applies to K through 12. One thing that, again, we were talking about with respect to those in D.C. that are using taxpayer money for private travel, there are some rules around that. If there's a medical disability, security concerns, no other available flights, and, quote, other exceptional circumstances. But I got to tell you, just looking at the history of some of the use of private air travel, I don't think that they meet any of those criteria. One senator spent about $50,000 for a flight, this was in 2023, from D.C. to the Grand Canyon to attend an event with President Joe Biden, who signed a proclamation to protect tribal land in the area. I don't think that meets any of those criteria, in my view. So the point is, yeah, there's members of Congress that are abusing this policy in a big sort of way. I'm going to be at the Trade Mart tomorrow for the Skills USA competition. Come see us. Stay safe and God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.